Hello and welcome to ENDSTEP, the Upkeep Aftershow. Episode 2 just came out last Friday. We were playing the Warhammer 40k Commander Precons. It was a fun game. It was a crazy game. If you haven't seen it, go watch it before you watch this, because otherwise this video won't make a whole lot of sense. Steven, say hi.
Hello.
It's just us in this episode. Normally, we record ENDSTEP right after Upkeep, but Sean had to leave before the game was even over, and then we had places to be. We had work. Yeah. So this is, as we filmed, I think we're filming the 6th episode tonight as of the recording of this one. So this is so far the only episode where we have to film it this way. Everything else is like right after the game. We'll get to jump into the conversation, which I think is going to be a lot better. So as a result, we're doing this episode a little different. Just Steven and I. We're going to have some simpler questions, less specific about the game and more about the Commander Precons themselves, which is actually probably good for this specific episode since we were playing the Precons for Universes Beyond. So we'll have just some different questions that we can ask in general. Steven, first question. Did you have a favorite moment in the game? Was there like any moment where you're like, oh, that was awesome, or oh, I can't believe I got to do that? Was there any moment like that for you?
No.
You didn't do much in the first half of the game.
Yeah, I didn't. I've looked through the deck, and there's a lot of good stuff in there. I think I just had a really slow start. And issues with mana. But then later in the game, I had a buttload of mana. Because I had
You had like Gilded Lotus.
I had like Gilded Lotus. I just had a lot of land in general. And
so, I don't... spoiler alert, but again, if you're watching this video, hopefully you've already seen the game. But on your last turn, you were activating, what's it called? Fortress? Tomb Fortress? Is that
something like that, yeah.
You were activating that. Do you think you would have won the game?
Probably. I think I would have outnumbered him at least. Because with that, I would have gotten, I can't remember exactly which creature, but I would have gotten a creature from the graveyard. When that creature enters the battlefield, then I can dig more stuff in my graveyard and put those on the battlefield. And then I was going to play another card from my hand, which would have gotten me more stuff from the graveyard. But then I ended up choosing a different card because he countered that. I choose like the creature that like when it enters the battlefield, I destroy target creature. And I wasn't going to originally play that card. But then after Jason countered that, my land ability, I was like, I need to cut his board down a smidge if I'm to attack him this turn. And it just wasn't enough. It was almost enough.
Yeah, you almost had him.
I did.
Yeah, that ended up being a lot closer than I would have expected. I kind of expected you to die early because you had such a slow start. But
yeah.
The deck seems
and a lot of people were just like hitting me unnecessarily.
Well, it was because you were
but mainly you and Sean, especially Sean.
Yeah. Well, Sean's also the main reason that we're having to do this episode at ENDSTEP this way. So, leave a comment down below telling us how much you hate Sean. Not just because he's a dumb Magic player. Actually, that's my favorite moment in the game, in the episode. My favorite moment in that episode was you were like, Sean, you're not a smart Magic player. And then like the next turn rotation, he was like mimicking you. He's like, Sean, you're not a smart Magic player. And you could tell it made Jason uncomfortable. And he just goes, haha, this is great.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was my favorite part.
Oh, I liked the part where Jason attacked, I think he attacked Sean with like 2 Vigilance tokens, right? And then he tapped them, and I pointed out they have Vigilance. And Morgan's like, why are you hoping? Jason was like, oh, thanks, buddy. And like, you gave me like a dirty look. You were like looking at me, and I was just like,
I mean, it didn't matter. You were screwed anyways.
Yeah.
I think, was I dead already with that? No, I wasn't
dead. No, because Sean died first.
Yeah, that's right. That was a fun game. This is such a fun thing, not just because we like making fun content to reach new fans and interact with you guys. As great as fun as that is, as great as that is, it's fun for us to get to look back because we usually release these at least a couple weeks after we film them. So it's fun for us to go back and watch them and be like, oh yeah, that was pretty good. So what do you think about Universes Beyond in general? Like these crossovers with non-Magic thing. I know that like when they first started doing these, there was the Walking Dead Secret Lair, there was the Stranger Things Secret Lair. Now we're doing this. Next year they're doing the Doctor Who Commander decks. What do you think about Universes Beyond? Does it break the immersion too much for you? Is it too weird, or do you think it's like it's whatever?
I think it
or
depends.
do you think it depends?
I think it depends on what it is, because I think the Warhammer, I felt like it was fine. I don't know much.
Because at least Warhammer's kind of fantasy.
Yeah.
Kind of. I mean, it's sci-fi it, sort of, but like the lore itself is pretty fantasy.
And I don't know much about Doctor Who, but I can't see that being that good. Or like, I know they had like a Fortnite Secret Lair at some point.
I blacked that out of my memory.
That's not good. Like, that's not good.
It's kind of funny. The Triumph of the Hordes is already... Triumph of the Hordes is already a salty card, and then you make a Secret Lair version of it that is Fortnite and makes people more salty. It's a great... Yeah, I think it depends, too, because the Walking Dead one, which unfortunately was the first one they ever did, made no sense to me. The Stranger Things one to me makes a little bit more sense in the sense that it's magic-y sci-fi, so it seemed closer to me, even though there's zombies in The Walking Dead and there's zombies in magic. That was like the only similarity.
Yep, and then you have some dude with a gun.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's guns in Warhammer, but in Warhammer, if I remember right, I'm not like a big genius on the Warhammer lore, but from what I've gathered and what I've remembered, it seems like in Warhammer, it's like they pray to their deities, and if they are blessed, then that is what allows the technology to function. So it's less... So it looks like science fiction, but it's a lot more fantasy in the background of things. But like there's going to be like an Assassin's Creed crossover. There's going to be a Final Fantasy crossover. I think both of those, if done right, they could be really cool.
I think
But the Warhammer one I liked. I thought it was pretty cool. I think a lot of these cards are sick. I think
the decks are all good.
Yeah, they're all
cool.
really fun. These are some of the best Commander Precons that I've got to play. I don't know if they're my favorite, but they're among my favorites. That leads into the next question, which, how do you think these decks play against each other? Not just in the sense of the context of the game. Because I think we could kind of see that in general, the decks all seem to be good against each other. Relatively speaking, the Chaos deck seemed to be a little bit too slow.
Well, my deck was slow at first.
Yeah, but that might have been more of a heart of the cards gone wrong kind of thing.
Yeah.
More than a deck construction thing. But you've got to play your deck a little bit, and you haven't upgraded it yet. So what do you think about not just how they play against each other, because I think we kind of got to see that they play well against each other, but in the context of a normal game of Commander, when you're just playing with average decks that people have, how do you think these, at least out of the box, how do you think they compete? Do you think that they are stronger than the average Precon, maybe about the same? Do you think they hold their own well?
I think they're a little better maybe than the average Precon, but I would say that the average casual Commander deck might be a little bit better than these overall, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, if you upgrade these decks, they're going to be like probably...
Yeah, but if you're like just using like as is, I'd say a little less so, because I've used that deck. I've used my Necron deck a few times, and I've never won a game with it in a 4-play setting. So I mean,
you've come close though, right? Or maybe
I've come close, but I've never won.
So it holds up okay, but it's not preferred. So I guess that somewhat leads into my next question, which is, what do you think about upgrading these decks? Just in general?
Think if you, because
here's the thing, is like, obviously, like, part of the fun of Precons is you have a couple directions you can go with it, and then you can kind of lean in one way or the other. Your deck especially, because there's like 5 legendary creatures in it. They're all very different depending on who you choose as your commander. There's a lot of different ways you can take the deck. Mm-hmm. So like that's part of the fun of Precons just in general. But these are like collector things, right? So what do you think about upgrading them? Do you think you need to leave it the same? Do you think it's okay to upgrade it just the normal way? Or do you think if you upgrade, you have to keep it on flavor? What's kind of your mindset on that?
I kind of think that if you upgrade it, like, for the theme of the deck, if you were to upgrade and switch cards out, it should still be on theme. So with the Necron
So look
deck,
like maybe the art looks like something, or the description sounds like something that could fit in the Warhammer universe.
or just like, and it might be easier with my deck because it's a mono black artifact deck. Because it's like there are artifacts I can think of that'd be good in the deck. And it's just there's a lot of artifact creatures.
Yeah.
So it might be easier for me, but I wouldn't want to take my deck in too much of a different direction. I'd want it to kind of stay true to what it is.
Yeah.
Like staying on flavor. It's okay if you switch some cards out, but you need to keep that flavor, I think.
I agree, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. Like Pleasant Kenobi, who's a YouTuber, he bought 2 copies of both decks. He bought 1 copy of each deck to leave it the same, and then he bought 1 of each copy that he could upgrade it and make it his own. And look, that's way too much money for the average person to spend, but I see where he's coming from. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think if you want to leave it the same for the sense of the collectability, maybe you're just a Warhammer player and you don't care that much about the game, you just think the cards are cool, you just leave it the same. But if you want to upgrade it, I don't think it's that big of a deal, especially since most of these cards fit the overall world of Magic just perfectly fine. So in the game, I was playing the Tyrannid deck, but that's not actually my deck. The deck that won, the deck that Jason was playing, the Esper token deck with Martius Calgar as a commander, that's actually my deck. And I've made a couple upgrades to it, but for the most part, I've only upgraded the lands. And then there's only 2 other cards I've upgraded. And I've been thinking about what else I would want to do. As much as possible, at least have the name of the card and what it does seem like something that could exist in the universe. And that way it also opens up to like maybe the name and the function works well with the deck, it works in the universe, but the art doesn't match. You can always just get alters done. So I'm thinking about doing that. I added, the 2 cards I added that weren't lands were Anointed Procession and Smothering Tithe, which I can tell you is broken, and there's a reason they didn't reprint it in there. It was busted. But both of those cards are perfectly fine in the context of the theme, but the art doesn't necessarily match 40k that much. But I could always just, get alters done or whatever. So I might do that. So my last question, is there a specific crossover in universes beyond that you would like to see with Magic?
That's a good question.
So I have an answer.
I
while
think...
you're thinking.
Okay, well, I think I just came up with one really good.
Okay,
I think a really cool one would be Lord of the Rings.
They're doing that.
Oh, they are doing that?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
There's going to be a set next year that is, it's kind of like Modern Horizons. So the cards they're not going to be standard legal, but they'll be legal everywhere else. So it's like that. So they'll be legal in Modern, Legacy, Commander,
That's
whatever.
fine. I don't play standard.
I love standard, but it's Lord of the Rings.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
I think that would be cool. What were you going to say?
Star Wars.
Yeah.
Because Star Wars is kind of the same thing as 40k, where on its surface it looks like sci-fi, but when you dig into the lore and stuff and the backgrounds, it's very much fantasy. So I think it kind of goes along that same path. Plus,
you can have the Millennium Falcon as a vehicle,
right? Added to the Shorkai deck. Oh, it'll be sick.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool cards. I mean, you could do like a Anakin flip it Darth Vader kind of card, you could do that. You could have like a toolboxy card that's like a Mandalorian because they have all the cool gadgets. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Yoda, like there's so many iconic characters. And even, you could do artifacts, you could do like a lightsaber. Like you could even if you just like reprinted the sword cycle and it was different lightsabers, like there's so many.
Right.
I feel like there's so many like practical ways that you could do Star Wars, but I'm also just a huge Star Wars nut. And I think that we need to be careful because there's also the Street Fighter crossover that I forgot about. That already came out. I think Sean bought that.
I did forget about that one too.
I think part of it is bias. Like people like us were like, oh, stupid Fortnite. And so like we're gonna hate the Fortnite one, but some people are gonna like it. Whereas meanwhile, we think 40k, we're not like 40k players, but we think it's cool.
Yeah.
So like we're like not as offended by that. So there's obviously bias here. But I think Star Wars would be really cool. I don't think that's gonna happen because Disney's doing their own card game now.
You think another one that would actually be really cool would be like the Harry Potter world?
I could see that.
That one could be really cool.
It's just Strixhaven point two.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking in my head. It's just like Strixhaven.
I don't know.
I think that one would be cool.
Going into Strixhaven when they announced it, I was like, oh my god, it's literally just going to be a Harry Potter ripoff. But it wasn't. It's obviously got a lot of similarities in the fact that it's like a wizard school and there's different factions. But other than that, there wasn't much similarity. So I was happy about that. But yeah, that's going to bring us to the end of ENDSTEP number 2. We are going to be back next Friday with the next episode of Upkeep. I can't breathe. That game is Tribal Week. We're all playing tribal decks. It was a fun game.
No, it wasn't.
I thought it was fun.
No, it wasn't.
I was playing dragons. Steven was playing werewolves. Preston is playing goblins, and Tommy's playing vampires. It's a cool game. Make sure you subscribe. Check it out. Again, just as a reminder on how this works, in case you haven't figured it out, every other week we have a new gameplay video, and then on those in-between weeks we do this, where we just talk about the game. I think that's it.
Okay.
Okay. Bye!